Before we begin, viewer discretion is strongly advised. The following is for educational and entertainment purposes only. This is the verbatim federal courtroom testimony of the Sean Diddy Combs trial as reported by Inner City Press. Kanye West just flipped the courtroom upside down. What started as a testimony against Diddy's alleged crimes turned into something far more explosive. Kanye accusing Clive Davis of orchestrating Whitney Houston's death. The judge was stunned. The prosecution didn't know what to say. And the gallery? Silent. According to Kanye, everything we thought we knew about Whitney's tragic end was a cover-up, and he claims Clive Davis planned it all. In this video, we break down Kanye's courtroom bombshell, the evidence behind his shocking allegations, the eerie timing of Clive's pre-Grammy party, and why Kanye says Clive is the real puppet master of the music industry's darkest secrets. The courtroom was packed. Cameras outside buzzed like hornets, trying to catch a glimpse of Kanye West, who had arrived draped in a muted gray suit and shades, flanked by security. He was here to testify against Sean Diddy Combs in a high-profile trial already smothered in scandal. Everyone expected a spectacle, but no one was prepared for the seismic shift Kanye would cause. As he walked through the courtroom doors and took his seat, a hush fell over the room. This wasn't just another witness. This was Kanye West, one of the most controversial and influential voices in the music industry, and someone with a lot to say, maybe too much. Initially, his testimony aligned with expectations. Kanye began by recounting his early experiences with Diddy, referencing industry parties, joint projects, and what he described as deeply troubling behavior. He spoke about Diddy's manipulation of young artists and alluded to secret gatherings in undisclosed locations where people lost themselves. These statements were already headline-worthy. But it was when the prosecution asked Kanye a simple question about whether he believed Diddy was acting alone in these operations that the tone of the testimony took a drastic turn. "You want the truth?" Kanye asked, removing his sunglasses and looking straight at the jury. "Then you need to know this ain't just about Diddy. It's bigger, much bigger. This goes back to Whitney Houston. This goes back to Clive Davis." Gasps echoed through the courtroom. Even the judge sat back, stunned. Attorneys on both sides looked confused, some alarmed. Kanye wasn't just testifying anymore, he was detonating a bomb. He pointed across the courtroom and said, "Y'all keep asking about Diddy like he's the top. He ain't. He's just a puppet. The real puppet master is Clive Davis." The courtroom erupted. A flurry of objections came from Diddy's legal team, but Kanye kept going, his voice louder, more intense. He brought up the 2012 Grammy weekend, Whitney Houston's sudden death, and the now infamous Clive Davis pre-Grammy party that continued just floors below her lifeless body. "You mean to tell me a man dies upstairs and you throw a party downstairs? That ain't tribute, that's ritual." Security began to move, but the judge motioned them back. "Let him finish," she said. Kanye then described how he believed the music industry is run like a shadow operation, with gatekeepers who decide who lives and who dies. According to him, Whitney was on the verge of exposing something much deeper. "She knew too much. She was breaking out. And when you break out, they put you down," he stated. The courtroom was frozen. Jurors sat wide-eyed, some leaning forward, others visibly shaken. Kanye had turned what was supposed to be a damning testimony against Diddy into an all-out exposé on Clive Davis and an industry allegedly built on sacrifice and silence. Once Kanye had opened the door, he refused to close it. He turned his entire testimony into an unscripted manifesto against Clive Davis, drawing eerie parallels between what happened to Whitney Houston and what he believed nearly happened to himself. "You ever wonder why all the legends die broke, sick, or alone?" he asked the courtroom. "Because they were never in control. They were managed, directed, pushed, and when they stepped out of line, they were removed." The prosecution tried to redirect him back to Diddy, but Kanye waved them off. "I'll talk about Diddy, but first, we gotta talk about the man who gave him the playbook." He accused Clive Davis of masterminding the environment that allowed abuse and manipulation to flourish. Diddy didn't invent this. He learned it from Clive, from the system Clive built. Look at the pattern. Kanye then recounted the events of February 11, 2012. He told the jury about Whitney being found face down in a bathtub, the paramedics arriving too late, and how Clive Davis continued with his party just one floor below. That wasn't grief. That wasn't respect. That was arrogance. That was power on full display, he said. He claimed that Whitney had tried to warn others. Kanye referenced the now viral video of Whitney interrupting an interview 2 days before her death, whispering to Brandy and allegedly saying the word drowned. "You think she didn't know?" Kanye asked. "That was a cry for help, and nobody answered." He then made an even more disturbing claim. According to Kanye, Whitney had called someone close to her hours before her death and left a cryptic voicemail. He says this call was wiped from her phone records. "You don't just erase a call unless it says something they don't want anyone to hear," Kanye insisted. When asked who they were, Kanye said, "The ones Clive works for. The ones who've been running this game since before most of y'all were born." Kanye concluded the segment of his testimony by stating that Diddy was guilty, but not alone. "You're looking at a monster, but someone made him that way." Kanye doubled down, calling Whitney Houston's death part of a pattern. He rattled off names like Michael Jackson and Prince, saying they too were sacrificed for power and money. They all tried to fight back. You think Prince wanted to die alone in an elevator? You think Michael wanted to go out like that? Come on now, he said. Kanye argued that Whitney was silenced because she refused to stay quiet. She had demons, yes, but she was trying to rise. She was making plans, reaching out to people, writing things down. She was going to talk. He then implicated Clive Davis in maintaining control of her catalog, reputation, and ultimately her legacy. Kanye cited how Whitney's posthumous releases soared in sales and how Clive's net worth continued to grow. She was worth more dead than alive. And they knew it, he said. He brought up Bobby Christina, Whitney's daughter, who died in eerily similar fashion. Same bathtub, same drugs, same silence, Kanye said, his voice trembling. If that ain't a pattern, I don't know what is. The gallery was silent. One juror reportedly had tears in their eyes. Kanye finished by saying, "You can call me crazy. You can say I'm reaching. But ask yourself this. How many coincidences make a conspiracy?" As he stepped down from the stand, the entire courtroom remained still. Diddy stared blankly. His attorneys were visibly shaken. And the public? They were already spreading Kanye's words like wildfire. As Kanye West's testimony against Diddy continued, it took a shocking and entirely unexpected turn. Initially focused on the web of abuse, control, and trafficking allegations, Kanye suddenly pivoted. With the courtroom hushed, he leaned into the microphone and, in a grave tone, said, "And let's be honest, Diddy ain't the one pulling all the strings. This goes deeper, way deeper. I'm talking about Clive Davis." That name dropped like a bombshell. Gasps rippled through the gallery. Even Diddy, who had been fidgeting nervously during the testimony, stopped cold and turned to his attorneys with a stunned look. For a brief second, The courtroom seemed to pause in suspended silence. Then Kanye continued, his voice firmer. He began recounting what he described as a dark pipeline in the music industry, one that Whitney Houston herself tried to escape. Whitney knew, Kanye claimed, she tried to leave. She tried to talk. And you all know what happened next. He alleged that her sudden death, found face down in a bathtub just hours before a party hosted by Clive Davis in the very same hotel, wasn't just tragic, but orchestrated. Kanye then referenced the infamous pre-Grammy party, calling it not a tribute, but a ritual. You think it's a coincidence that she died in that hotel and the party kept going? That ain't grief. That's control. That's power. That's sending a message. Prosecutors exchanged surprised glances. Kanye hadn't warned anyone this was coming, but he wasn't done. That party was the mask. The real celebration wasn't downstairs. It was upstairs. That woman was gone. And they knew she was gone. They danced while she lay upstairs, cold. Clive knew. Everyone knew. But nobody said nothing. By now, Diddy was visibly shaken, but not from Kanye's accusations toward him. It was the shift in focus that rattled him. Kanye was making it clear that there was a bigger fish behind the scenes, and the fish, in his eyes, was Clive Davis. Defense attorneys objected, trying to steer the testimony back to Diddy. But the judge allowed Kanye to finish his train of thought, as his statements related to the culture of intimidation in the industry, a central theme in the case. In his conclusion, Kanye stared across the courtroom and asked, "You want to know why I don't end up like Michael Jackson, like Whitney? Because I stopped playing their game." He paused, then delivered the most chilling line of the day. Clive Davis is not a mentor. He's an architect, and his blueprints are made of silence and bathtubs. Following Kanye's explosive claim, court officials replayed a series of documentary excerpts and eyewitness testimonies about the night Whitney Houston died. The goal? To verify or discredit Kanye's suggestion that Whitney's death wasn't accidental. The jury watched in silence as security footage showed a frenzied set of events at the Beverly Hilton. Her assistant found her body at 3:30 p.m., and by 3:55, Whitney Houston was officially declared dead. But what stood out the most wasn't just the timeline. It was the atmosphere afterward. Despite Whitney's death, Clive Davis's pre-Grammy party went ahead as planned just hours later, in the same hotel. Several witnesses, including hotel staff and security, testified that her body remained in the room upstairs as celebrities danced, posed for photos, and toasted champagne. Some attendees claimed they didn't even know she had died until the next morning. Others said they found out and were horrified the party wasn't canceled. A longtime friend of Whitney's told the court she would have never wanted the show to go on. That wasn't her. That was them. When asked who them was, she said plainly, the people who made money off her, whether she was alive or dead. The courtroom was then shown excerpts from the infamous interview in which Whitney crashes Clive's media appearance with Brandy and Monica. The footage, shown just 2 days before her death, depicted Whitney handing Brandy a note and repeating the word, "drown." Viewers were stunned. One expert analyst told the jury that such a repetition, in context, could suggest premonition or fear. "It's as if she knew," he said. Kanye's earlier claims began to feel less like a wild outburst and more like a connecting thread, especially when Chaka Khan's past interviews were read aloud, where she described Clive's party as complete insanity, stating that it felt more like a sacrifice than a tribute. The implication was dark. Whitney's death was known, expected, and, in some disturbing way, acknowledged. Not with mourning, but with celebration. Clive Davis declined to testify at the trial, citing health concerns. But that didn't stop prosecutors from drawing attention to the optics and the money. After Whitney's death, her album sales skyrocketed. Licensing deals were renegotiated, royalties flowed, the posthumous machine kicked in. And the key beneficiary of that financial surge, Clive Davis. By now, the courtroom had adjusted to the shock, but no one expected Kanye to return to the stand for a second round of testimony, this time with purpose. In what observers called a calculated bomb drop, Kanye expanded his claims. Clive Davis didn't just pull the strings alone, he used Diddy. The courtroom erupted. Diddy's lawyers shouted objections, demanding relevance, but Kanye pressed forward. Diddy was the fall guy, the front, the one they used to get close to people like Whitney, like Michael. And if you don't believe me, ask Fahim Muhammad. The name Fahim Muhammad turned heads immediately. Former head of security for both Michael Jackson and Diddy, Fahim had already been mentioned in Lil Rod's civil lawsuit as someone who could make people and problems disappear. Kanye claimed that Fahim wasn't just security. He was a handler, one who moved from Jackson's circle to Diddy's with uncanny timing. Then Kanye delivered his most damning claim yet. I heard the tape of Michael's last phone call, and guess who he was trying to warn people about? Not Dr. Murray, not Sony. Clive Davis. Gasps rippled through the gallery. According to Kanye, Michael had grown paranoid in his final weeks, and not without reason. He believed he was being followed, recorded, and monitored. Michael said, "They're coming for me," and he meant Clive. Not in code, not in metaphor, in name. Prosecutors then played a video clip of Kanye from an old interview. In it, he said, "The people who made Michael disappear are the same ones trying to silence me." The courtroom, now deeply invested in Kanye's narrative, watched as connections between industry moguls, handlers, and unexplained deaths began to feel less speculative and more sinister. Was it a conspiracy, or a desperate artist's last attempt to reclaim truth? That question now sat with the jury. As Kanye West stepped down from the stand, murmurs filled the courtroom. But the prosecution wasn't done. To corroborate his claims, they called a forensic psychiatrist to the stand who had studied the behavioral patterns of Whitney Houston in the final weeks of her life. The expert, who had reviewed hours of interviews, personal journal entries, and eyewitness accounts, painted a chilling picture. She exhibited signs of extreme paranoia. The expert testified she was convinced someone was watching her, that her phone was tapped, that she was being followed. The prosecution then played a 2012 interview clip that had previously gone unnoticed, Whitney saying, "They want to silence me." When asked who they were, Whitney declined to name names, but her eyes told a story. There was a fear that no amount of fame could mask. Enter the infamous Brandy interview, shown again. Whitney passing a cryptic note on camera just 2 days before her death. For years, fans speculated what that note said. Now, Kanye West claimed he had spoken to someone close to Brandy who told him Whitney had scribbled, "Don't trust Clive, I need help." That note has never resurfaced, but its timing and her mention of the word drown repeatedly in the same moment hit hard. The prosecution moved to a timeline. February 11, 2012. Whitney was scheduled to perform at Clive Davis's pre-Grammy party at the Beverly Hilton. Hours before the event, she was found unresponsive in her hotel bathtub. While paramedics worked upstairs, Clive's party was setting up downstairs. Cameras flashed, champagne poured. Witnesses recalled the eerie contrast. One floor above, a woman's life was lost. One floor below, the music played on. Several industry insiders were called to the stand anonymously. One stated under oath, Whitney had been saying for months that she wanted out of contracts, out of deals, out of the machine. When asked what she feared would happen, the insider simply said, she was afraid they'd do to her what they did to Michael. And then came the bombshell. An ex-employee of Clive Davis testified that in the week before Whitney's death, she overheard a heated phone call between Davis and another executive. According to her, Clive said, "If she won't play ball, she's a liability. That's not my problem anymore." Whether the quote could be verified was uncertain. But in a courtroom already on edge from Kanye's claims, it hit like thunder. The jury leaned in. One woman covered her mouth. And Diddy? He sat, arms crossed, no longer defensive, just pale. Kanye's claim that the Clive Davis pre-Grammy party was not a tribute but a ritual now took center stage. The prosecution played a clip of Chaka Khan from a 2012 interview. Her voice trembled as she recalled, "I couldn't go. I was supposed to. I just couldn't get dressed. It felt wrong." She went on to say she couldn't understand how anyone could party while Whitney's body lay upstairs. Then came a video montage of the party itself, celebrities dancing, laughing, taking photos, all while security guarded room 434, where Whitney's body remained for 11 hours. A former staff member at the Beverly Hilton testified that he saw music executives walking out of Whitney's room just hours before the party began. He said he thought it was strange. They didn't look shocked or sad. They looked calm, like it was handled. His testimony was short, but the silence that followed was long. Next came footage of Clive Davis being interviewed the day after Whitney's death. When asked if he had considered canceling the party, Clive replied without hesitation, "Never." This, the prosecution argued, wasn't just callous. It suggested premeditation. "You're telling me," the prosecutor said in closing remarks, "that the man who discovered Whitney Houston couldn't cancel a party out of respect or grief?" Then came financial records. After Whitney's death, her albums re-entered the Billboard Top 10 within 24 hours. Sales jumped 1,000%. Licensing rights skyrocketed. The key benefactor of this windfall? Sony Music and Clive Davis. It was at this point that Kanye's earlier words echoed through the courtroom. "You're worth more dead than alive, as long as they own your masters." The prosecution argued that the industry, particularly Davis, had a financial incentive to capitalize on Whitney's death. And when death becomes profit, motive begins to emerge. But what disturbed the courtroom most was the spiritual element Kanye referenced, the idea of a ritual. Images were shown from the party, red lighting, strange symbols in the decor, and celebrities arriving in all black. A music industry whistleblower testified anonymously that the party had the energy of a celebration, not of life, but of a closing. He said, "I've been to every Clive Davis party for 15 years. That one was different." And so the jury was left with a haunting question. Was this really just a tribute to a fallen icon? Or was it a masked celebration of a silent sacrifice? As the final day of the week wrapped up, the courtroom was forever changed. Kanye West was called back for a final statement, not legally necessary, but the judge allowed it. "They tried to silence me, too," Kanye began, his voice steady. "Whitney, Michael, Prince, they wanted out, and they got put down." He accused the music industry of operating like a cartel, calling Clive Davis the puppeteer, and Diddy the enforcer. Diddy didn't throw that party because he wanted to, Kanye claimed. He threw it because he had to. That's what happens when you sign a soul deal with devils. Kanye pointed to Fahim Muhammad again, saying he was the common thread between Michael Jackson's downfall and Diddy's current scandal. How does a 20-year-old business grad go from campus to guarding Michael Jackson? Then Diddy? Either he's a genius, or he's a ghost handler. But Kanye's most jaw-dropping statement came as he concluded his remarks. I know y'all want to paint me as crazy. You did the same to Ye, to Michael, to Whitney. But here's the difference. I'm still breathing. And I ain't gonna stop talking. Because silence is how they win. And I ain't letting them win. The judge adjourned for the day, but the buzz didn't stop. Reporters flooded the hallway. The jury left visibly shaken. Diddy's legal team, once composed and confident, now looked rattled and reactive. The press called it the most explosive celebrity testimony in decades. But more than that, it had now become clear this wasn't just a trial about Diddy. This was a trial about power, silence, and sacrifice in the entertainment industry. A modern-day reckoning, one where Kanye West stood up against all odds and pointed to Clive Davis, saying, "You may have taken them, but you won't take me." And as the gavel fell, there was only one thought echoing in everyone's minds. What if he's telling the truth?